Sandy Says Read. Welcome back to the channel. This evening we're going to learn the story of how I got published. Just sit right back and you hear a tale that took many years, long and arduous journey to getting published. But it's humorous, it's good, it's fun. Maybe you guys will learn something, from my foibles and mistakes. So here we go. Let's get started. All right, first of all, I had wanted to write since I was a child. I began writing short stories for my great-grandmother when I think I was in first grade. I want to say I was in first grade when I would write these cute little bitty stories about spiders, squeaky spiders to be exact, and mice that would go out and pick berries and bring berries back to their little mouse homes. And my great-grandmother would share these stories with the people in her apartment building to encourage me. And I thought that was awesome that she would share these things. So I would write little stories from, a very early age. I would write these things, and I loved doing it. When I was in third grade, I remember writing a story that started with the table of contents in the front of the book. I kid you not, I wrote out, the table of contents. I wrote the headline or the title that I wanted the chapter to have with a page number. And then I figured, about how many pages I would want that chapter to have, and I wrote the next chapter title and the page number for it. So this is how I was going to write my book when I was in third grade. So I came a long way by the time I was ready to start writing when I was in, say, junior high and high school and so forth. I realized you can't write that way. You just write, regurgitate words onto a page and go from there. And then edit some more and edit some more. Okay, so by the time I got out of college and I was, I interviewed for jobs before I got out of college. I was, doing the job hunt thing before I graduated. And I remember one specific job interview. For the job I actually landed, I was at a round table, and there were many people from middle management, upper management interviewing me en masse. It was a huge group interview thing. So it was a little nerve-wracking. But I remember one of the older gentlemen at the table asking me, because I was getting an English degree, he asked me, "So, are you working on the next great American novel? Ha ha ha." And it was a very condescending, patronizing sort of question. I knew that my answer to that question needed to be no. No, I am not working on the next great American novel. I needed to make sure that everyone at that table understood I was not trying to write a book on the side, that my energies were going to be devoted to my new job and not frivolous writing projects. And so I gave him the correct answer. I got the job, and I did continue writing on the side because I enjoyed it and I wanted to do that. I wanted to write a book. Fast forward to 2003, and I completed my manuscript by 2003. And that's where our story is going to really get interesting. So in 2003, when I finished the manuscript for Choices Meant for Gods, I was married at the time, and my husband refused to read the manuscript. He would not even look at it. And I have to say, he probably was concerned that by reading it, and if he then gave me any comments, I would probably freak out. And okay, that's valid. I get it. So I had friends who read the manuscript. I had test readers who read the manuscript and gave me some pointers, gave me some ideas, gave me some feedback to help me with it. And while I was doing some editing based off of their ideas and suggestions, I started looking for an agent. I had a friend named Steve who, when he learned that the manuscript was done, said to me, "Oh, so now you're going to get an agent, right?" And I thought, oh my gosh, that's what I do next. Okay. So off I went to Barnes & Noble to get a book on how to get your book published once you've got your book. And yes, now I need an agent. So I was learning on how to get an agent. What do I do to get an agent? And around that time, I had read Wizard's First Rule by Terry Goodkind. Loved the book so much. In fact, I had 2 copies of this book. I bought the paperback copy first. I saw the book in Barnes & Noble probably, or Books A Million, one of those places, and picked it up to read it. I hadn't gotten around to it when I was in a Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, Borders, one of those places again, and saw the hardcover copy and went, oh my gosh, this looks like a great book. I'd like to read it. Bought it, took it home, and realized, oh, I already had this on my shelf. Well, whatever. I read it, loved it, and then Terry Goodkind was doing a book signing at one of the nearby Barnes & Noble stores, I think over in just across the border in Kansas, because I live in Kansas City. So, husband and I got dressed up, went to see Terry, got this signed. I, visited with him for a minute, thanked him so much for thanking Richard and Kaylin, two of his main characters, in the book, and just talked to him a little bit. And then I said, now, I'm going to say 5 words you don't want to hear. I have written a book. So what do I do next? I said, I need to get an agent. What would you advise me? And he said, contact, and he gave me the name of a gal who worked in his agent's office. I'm like, thank you, I will, and I'll drop your name. So I did. I contacted her. I wrote a beautiful query letter to her, and of course I dropped Terry's name. But when Terry signed this book for me, he said, to Sandy, nothing is ever easy. All the best. And you know what, Terry? You're freaking right. But I did query the young lady in his agent's office. She was not accepting fantasy works at that time. Of course, Choices Meant for Gods is a fantasy novel. So I learned my first lesson, which is when you are querying agents, make sure they are A, accepting submissions, B, are accepting submissions in the genre you have written. So my next idea was to look for an agent who was accepting fantasy. And I discovered Lucine Diver. I don't want to say I was stalking her, because I wasn't. I was just researching her. I was researching what she liked, what she was interested in, what kinds of books she had worked with already, what kind of authors she had worked with already. And I was discovering, I think she had a blog already at that time. This was 2003. She may have already had a blog. She had some way that she was communicating with the outside world on a pretty regular basis. And I was reading that information, looking at, it must have been a website or something at that time. But I was looking up information about her, and she was intriguing to me. And she seemed like a knowledgeable, wonderful lady. And I thought, I want to work with her. So I sent a query letter to her, started with her. There were a couple of other agents that I thought would be interesting to work with as well, with fantasy literature. And so I wrote to them too, but I started with Lucine because I just really thought she would be awesome to work with. All right, junk mail, junk mail, junk mail. Oh my God, it's from Lucine Diver. Oh my God, she wrote back to me, and it's short. You know what that means? It's short, it's short, it's short. Yeah. Ah, she wants to see my manuscript! She wants to see my manuscript! She wants to see my manuscript! Yeah! Yes! Okay, so when Lucine's letter came back saying, yes, send me the first 50 pages of your manuscript, I was on cloud 9. So I polished up those first 50 pages, made sure they were perfect, no typos, no spelling errors, no problems, sent it out to her, and then the waiting game began. And it was like a nerve-wracking, I think maybe 6 or 7 weeks before I heard back from her. It was a little while. And this was close to Christmas time. And then I received her rejection. She said no, she doesn't want it. All right, so rejection is part of being an author. It's gonna happen. Not every literary agent is going to love the way you write. Not every literary agent is going to want to represent what you've prepared. The first 50 pages back in 2003 sucked. I mean, let's just get right down to it. I mean, Lucine was absolutely right. She wrote to me, she wrote back, and she had a lovely rejection letter. It wasn't one of those, form slip rejections that sometimes we receive, that just says, we're not interested, don't contact us again. It wasn't like that. She actually took the time to send back a note that said, I'm not interested at this time. I can't get excited about this manuscript at this time. And what I read into that was, this sucks. And she was right. I couldn't get excited about it anymore either. I looked at those first 50 pages and realized I did a lot of that bathtub rumination. It was just too much exposition, too much description, too much just suckiness. So I revised, I edited, I fixed it. I went back to the drawing board and I took that story, that kernel of the story, those characters that I loved, and I fixed it. I reworked it. And I really have to say thank you, Lucine, because you didn't send just that form rejection. You sent something that I read and took to heart and then worked with. And I'm thankful that she did. I am so thankful she took the time to give me something more than just no. Not everyone is so lucky as that. Sometimes these agencies are so overwhelmed and so busy, they don't have time to sit down and pen something, glorious and glamorous and, giving authors tips on how to fix something. They don't have time for that. Okay, so some things happened between that rejection and the time that I was able to start querying that book again. Things happened like I moved across half of a continent. I had to sell a house. I quit a job, moved, got a new job, did a lot of things. So the book kind of, even though I was editing and playing with it and doing some things with it, it kind of went on the back burner. It went on a shelf somewhere, so to speak. When I was ready to launch it again, I went straight to a publisher this next time. What I did is I joined a writer's group in the new city that I moved to. Joined a writer's group. I got more in depth with my editing skills, my book editing skills. I mean, I've been a magazine editor for, ever and a day, but the book editing is a little different, So I kind of honed those skills. I got more into writing, those long narratives, and just really worked on the craft. And when I was ready, I went to a book conference, made an appointment ahead of time with a publisher, sat down with him and pitched my book. Here's something interesting that happened during that pitch. I'm sitting there, I'm talking to this guy, I'm nervous a wreck, of course, because I'm, pitching my life to this guy. And a friend of mine in the book club walks up to me, interrupts the pitch to ask me if I can put some flyers up at a university for this event she has coming up. And I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I'll take those flyers. Thank you. Goodbye. Now, what was I talking about? I had to completely switch gears and then come back to my pitch with this publisher. Oh, it was nerve-wracking, but it worked out fine. And in fact, my friend later, she's like, oh my God, I didn't realize you were having a pitch. I'm so sorry. It worked out fine because the fellow was like, this sounds great. Send me, the manuscript. Let me look at it. Sent it to him, and then that waiting game began again. But he sent me a contract. There was no upfront bonus. That it doesn't happen. He is a publisher for a smaller publishing house. It's one of these independent publishing houses. There's not tons of cash in that kind of operation. So there was no upfront bonus. There was no big fat royalty check to launch this thing. That happens in the movies. That happens in those lottery winning events, but not with indie publishing houses so much. But I was thrilled because a publisher was going to publish my book, my story, my trilogy, and get it out the door without me having to pay a red cent to do it. And just because I had the contract in hand doesn't mean that my search for a literary agent was over. Bob Jelinas, the owner, CEO of Arcabooks Publishing, required that I have a literary agent. But he had literary agents who worked with other authors in his publishing house, of course, because he required it. So he put me in touch with one in particular. She and I worked together for the first book, for Choices Meant for Gods. She is a wonderful lady, very nice lady, really, truly. So I want to make that clear. She was a nice lady. I don't know that she and I were a great fit together to be partners in the literary field. Because each time that I had a question or that I needed, some advice, I felt that she was hesitant to give me a straight yes or no answer. There wasn't that wonderful, there wasn't that wonderful professional relationship there that I would love to have with a literary agent. Be that as it may, we were together for the first book, but then when it came time to do, book 2, Choices Meant for Kings, and book 3, Choices Meant for All, Bob and I had a good working relationship together. He knew I wasn't going to be one of those diva authors. He knew I was going to be easy to work with. When he had suggestions for corrections, for edits, I would take care of it. I would make them. And so he and I knew how to work together, and we worked together very well. So he sort of dropped that need for the literary agent to be a go-between for us. So I didn't have to go searching for a new literary agent for those other books. But having said that, I would love to have a literary agent at this point, for not just working in Archibooks publishing, but for other works that I have, to pitch in other publishing houses. I've had other things published in other publishing houses that it would have been neat to have a literary agent working with me as my partner, as my teammate, a person to help me with my editing, to help me with that narrative style, to just be my partner in this. I would enjoy that relationship, that professional business relationship that the agent and author are supposed to have together. And I would love to have that with a partner. But I have not had the time to do query letters and send those out and go through that process. Although, maybe I should make that a point to try and, make it happen. And that is a point I wanted to kind of bring up in this video, is that once you've gotten published, whether it's in a small indie house, even if you've done like a self-publishing for yourself, and you've gotten some sales, you've gotten some figures that you can show, you've built a little bit of an audience, you've got a following, a fan base, those are good numbers to show to a literary agent. Start that in your query letter. Say, hey, I've got this many fans who are interested in my future works. I mean, yeah, that's a very business thing to say. Maybe that's not the first thing you put in the query letter, but it's something that a literary agent will have an interest in. I mean, we're all business people in this, as well as creatives. All right, so that's the journey to me getting published. What have I forgotten to tell you about? What do you have questions about? Okay, I know what I forgot to tell you. The first book in the trilogy was published in 2007, in the spring of 2007. I had my first book signing at a Barnes & Noble in June of 2007. I had several book signings that summer and that autumn for that, for Choices Meant for Gods. And then Choices Meant for Kings came out, I think, 2 years later. It came out in 2009, the beginning of 2009. And then Choices Meant for All came out quite a bit later. I had a delay in there because of some health stuff and things and whatnot. But I wanted to show you my map because I want to give props to the artist who helped me put this map together. I worked with a gal named Megan Kissinger, and she is a wonderful artist. She can do anything. She can paint in any medium. She's just amazing. And she worked with me at a university in Southwest Florida for a while. So that's how I knew her. And when I had Choices Meant for Gods with Bob, when he was looking at the manuscript, she was very, supportive and saying encouraging things to me. And when the contract came through, she was really supportive and encouraging and just so kind to me. And I told her about the map for my book, and showed her this like sketch that I had, and I asked her, could you draw this on the computer for me? Could you take my sketch that sucked and turn it into something glorious? And she was like, oh, we can do so much with this. And she did. Look at this map. Look at how wonderful and beautiful this is. She did such an amazing job. Seriously, you guys, the piece of paper that I gave to her originally was just a sketch with, some rivers, some mountain areas, some names of places, and she turned it into this amazing map of the world of Onweald. Onweald is an Old English word that means power. She took it and just made this amazing. It's Megan, I never get lost because of you. It's just wonderful. Anyway, that's the map in the front of each of the books is from Megan. She did that for me, Megan Kissinger. You can find her online and look up her work because she's amazing. She has different conservation societies that she has done artwork for, and she's been given amazing awards for her work and her sculptures and things that she's done. She's just amazing. And she did my map. Oh, okay, so any questions that you guys have about this process and stuff like that, I can, if I don't know an answer, I can help find an answer. I'm happy to do that because getting published is, it's fun. It's amazing. It's wonderful to be able to hold your story in your hands. It's amazing. So if there's a way that I can help another author do that and realize that dream, I would love to be able to help. And that's what this video is for. Thank you so much for watching, and comment below with questions.